Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Okay. Hey, thanks for coming. Hope you all got pizza. Help yourself to more. We got tons of pizza. I'm Kevin Schofield. I'm General Manager of Microsoft Research. Where's my co-conspirator? Ritik Sengupta is my co-conspirator and inviting you all here today. We're thrilled to have folks from the Woodland Park Zoo come talk to you about some really interesting work that they're doing, tell you about some opportunities through the Giving campaign to help them out in some of the great projects they're doing. They actually brought 3 critters along today that are super exciting, so it's going to be an awesome session for the next hour. They asked me sort of, in just sort of opening this, to tell you sort of my favorite story about the zoo. And I've been, supporter of the zoo for a long time, both in terms of my own time as well as my own money. And actually, my favorite story about the zoo happened a long time ago. Actually back in 1971, 1972, and it's actually the reason that I'm involved in the zoo, which is this is sort of the zoo that almost wasn't, because in 1971 their tax levy from the city of Seattle that was sort of the operational budget for the zoo didn't get funded. The voters voted it down, and there was this crisis in the zoo. I mean, literally, they lost their budget, and they sat down and they said, "Look, we either have to close down the zoo," and they came about that close to actually closing it, or do something very different with the zoo. And so they stepped back and they wrote this amazing visionary document that said, basically laid down a vision for what a zoo should be in the latter half of the 20th century and sort of on into the 21st century. And there's really sort of 3 parts to this. It said, number one, it shouldn't be about animals in cages. And in 1971, that's largely what the Woodland Park Zoo was. It was all animals in cages. They said it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't be animals in isolation. It should really be about habitats. Number 2, they said the primary goal of the zoo should be educational. You should be teaching kids and adults about animals and habitats and learning how that part of the environment works. And number 3, it said that the zoo should really sort of have a global role. It should do great things educationally and for the community sort of here in Seattle and Washington State, but it should be much bigger than that. And they can actually have an active participation in global conservation programs because they have so much information and knowledge and expertise about animals and habitats that they can actually make smart decisions on how to take a larger global role in global conservation programs. And then what they've done over the last 35 years has truly been amazing. If you look now at the zoo, it's 90 to 95% habitat exhibits, right? It has a very strong educational program, both at the zoo itself, outreach around Washington State, and new programs they're doing at the zoo, some of which we're going to hear about today, like Zoomazium. And they're, one of the things that I think is really amazing about the zoo is they've really taken a very active role in global conservation programs. And one of the reasons that I'm happy to give them money is I care deeply about global conservation, and I know that they can do a much better job of investing that money wisely because of the smarts they have about it than I could on my own. So from 1971, 1972, this massive crisis for the zoo, they've done this amazing pioneering thing. They were really the first, the leader and the pioneer in creating a zoo for the 21st century. And I'm sort of proud to be a part of that and give them my support. And I hope you'll find, some of the information they share with us today sort of gets you inspired and interested in doing something with the zoo yourself. So at this point, I want to introduce Paul Bally from the development office at the zoo, who's going to sort of tell you about a little more about the zoo and introduce some of the other folks here today. So thanks.
Thanks very much, Kevin. And thanks again to all of you for coming today. We really appreciate you coming, taking time away from your busy schedule. I know how it is here at Microsoft. I actually used to be a Microsoft employee. In fact, I worked here for about 10 years, from about 89 to 99. And so I can totally appreciate how swamped you can get and how things will come up at the last minute and how you won't make that incredible lunch you really wanted to come to. So thank you very much to all of you. And just as a housekeeping item, if there's a couple of sign-up sheets around, if you would like to get more information about the zoo, if you'd like to sign up for our e-newsletter, We'd also like to get a chance to know, who came today. If you could sign up on the sign-up sheets that are around on some of the chairs, that would be greatly appreciated. So how did I end up here at Woodland Park Zoo? Well, it's a long story, but to really cut to the chase, I love animals and conservation. And I loved them as a kid, and somewhere along the line I decided that having a business career was the right thing to do, and somehow Microsoft enabled me to come back to my passion, which was just absolutely amazing to me. In fact, when I left in '99, I went and worked for about 4 or 5 years over at Conservation Northwest. Actually, I know some of you from my days over there, and just about 2 years ago joined here at the zoo. And what speaks to me about the zoo really is the fact that they, in fact, are not only a regional conservation organization, but a global conservation organization. From butterflies to grizzly bears, from snow leopards to tree kangaroos, we are protecting animals all around the world and really taking some unique approaches to protecting animals in their habitat. And by the by, you all know we're a great family entertainment venue. We have some great ways of connecting kids at an early age with animals and nature as well, which I think is really important because ultimately I think the reason all of you are here is because you have an interest in hopefully saving the planet. And that's really part of what the zoo is all about. So I was going to go into all these facts and figures and a lot of history. I'll just tell you briefly that the zoo actually started as a little menagerie up on Finney Ridge back in the late 1800s. And when Guy Finney actually passed away, his estate was bought by the city of Seattle for about $100,000. So it turned out to be a pretty excellent investment. We're now 92 acres. We have 1,100 animals, over 300 species, 35 species survival programs. We've funded 95 different conservation programs around the world, invested over $2 million in doing that. So on and on. I could keep going, but what I want to do is I want to bring up our speakers to really tell you more about it. So the first person that I actually wanted to call up is Karen Oftus. She is in our education department, and she is going to bring one of our first ambassador animals, and I think you're going to love this animal.
Yeah. Ambassador animals are very, very important to the work that the zoo does. This is the link that we have in the education department to excite people and to inspire them to support our conservation programs. Now, some of our animals, the zoo is about animals, and lions and tigers and bears, those charismatic megafauna, are really what people come to see. But when they get a chance to have close-up encounters with creatures like this, then they really walk away inspired and empowered and amazed at how remarkable wildlife is. This animal, this is an African pygmy hedgehog, and yes, it is small, it is petite, it is cute, but it is not, I repeat, it is not cuddly. And the reason is because it's covered with spines all over its body, you can see. Now this guy is actually really used to being around people, so he doesn't have a need to erect his spines for protection. Oh, now this is great. I love this when things are happening. African pygmy hedgehogs do something that's called self-anointing. And it's a behavior that we do not know why they do it, but usually they'll come along something that smells interesting. In this case, I had the gloves in the container, and there's new mulch and substrate in that container that smells good. And when they come upon something that's new or novel, they begin licking the surface. They froth up all the saliva in their mouth, and then they spit it all over their quills. Now what this does is if an animal comes along, a predator, and they want to defend themselves, they can roll up into a ball, and a predator is less likely to harass them because of that saliva on their quills. If I put them on my bare skin, actually it makes my skin itch. So there's something in that saliva that creates that itchy, irritating feeling. It's really a good way for this animal to protect itself. Now, we have one of our other staff who has come here is Dr. Lisa Daybeck. And Dr. Daybeck is the Director of Conservation at the zoo, and she knows certainly firsthand the importance of animals to inspire and connect people to nature. And what she's going to do is she's going to talk a little bit about a couple of the programs that, the conservation programs that we have going on at the zoo, both here, we work in the field here in Washington State, but also out there internationally. So I'd like to ask Dr. Daybeck to take her space there. Isn't he cute? minute?
Okay. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today. What I want to do is just spend a few minutes talking about our conservation programs and give you a sense of what the zoo does. I sort of serve as the link between the animals at the zoo and what we do in the field. And so I'm sort of a behind-the-scenes type of person because most people that come to the zoo and see animals don't know how much we're actually doing to save habitat and work with animals in the wild. So we actually have a major Partners for Wildlife program, and we focus in 3 major regions of the world, the Asia-Pacific, Africa, and the Pacific Northwest. And so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our Pacific Northwest programs and then about the program that I run. With our Pacific Northwest partnerships, we have a real commitment to local, regional conservation. And what's really exciting is that we link up, we have a Zoo and Aquarium Alliance, which means that all the zoos and aquariums in the Pacific Northwest, so Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and even in British Columbia, we have joined together because we believe that it's really important for zoos and aquariums to make the commitment to link our institutions with field conservation. So we are now, it's 9 institutions that are working together, and we work in partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service on endangered species recovery programs, with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we look at what their priority species are, and we then work and see how we can help them. And then we also work with other Pacific Northwest conservation programs. And one of the things that the zoo can do that no other conservation organization or even the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife can do is doing head starting and breeding of animals in captivity to then reintroduce back into the wild. So we have an amazing program with the Western Pond Turtle Recovery Program. We've been working, this is an endangered species. It's local here in this area. And we've been working for the last 10 years with different agencies and organizations to head start. And you can see those little turtles right there. When they hatch out, we literally head start them, which means that we raise them up so that they will be bigger and then we can release them. And the reason why we do that is they're very susceptible to being eaten by bullfrogs. And that's a major issue of why they're endangered. And so we then work and reintroduce them into protected areas in Washington State. It's been a really successful program, and we are growing the numbers of their populations. We also do the same thing with some butterfly species, the silver spot butterfly. We also do head starting, and then those are released back into the wild. We also link up with monitoring and education and outreach programs. There's a great program called the Grizzly Bear Outreach Project, and they go out around the state into rural areas where there might be conflicts of humans and bears, and they're trying to educate people saying, you know, bears live in the wild, and these are the ways that you can better live with them when you're camping or whatever. And we had a great weekend event called Bear Awareness Weekend, and we use the grizzly bears at our institution, at the zoo, and people can come to the zoo and then learn about what we're doing out in the wild. We also support a program on raptors of the shrub steppe, and we care both about the habitat of the shrub steppe as well as the raptors that are found there. I run a program in Papua New Guinea, and this is our link with the tree kangaroos at the zoo with our field conservation efforts in Papua New Guinea. And I've been working there for the last 10 years, and this is a community-based conservation program. It started at the Woodland Park Zoo. I was actually a graduate student at the University of Washington, did all my dissertation work with the tree kangaroos at the zoo, and now I spend part of my year in Papua New Guinea working with the local people in Papua New Guinea to protect habitat. So the main goals of this conservation program are to actually establish a conservation area, and we have a conservation area that's 200,000 acres of pristine rainforest that the Woodland Park Zoo is partly responsible for protecting. But we also do research there. We support community schools, and so we link the schools, the village schools in Papua New Guinea, with school kids here in Seattle. And we're also supporting community health services there. And also, one of the things that I feel most important about is supporting education of people in Papua New Guinea. So I have graduate students in Papua New Guinea that are doing the research. This is one of them, Gabriel Porolak. He's a master's student, and he's doing radio telemetry of tree kangaroos and actually monitoring them in the wild. And actually, I want to just point out, in that picture is this book. And I'm very proud to say that we are launching this book by Cy Montgomery and Nick Bishop this weekend. And at the end of the time, there will be information. There's going to be a book reading at Third Place Books and also at the Seattle Public Library. This author and photographer joined me for 3 weeks in Papua New Guinea and wrote this book about what zoos can do in the wild and linking the animals in the zoo with what we do. And actually there's also a chapter about our animal health program at the zoo and how they take care of animals in the zoo and how that links to the wild. But I think what I've learned the most is that conservation is about people. And we work very much with the animals, and all of us are absolutely committed to animals. But if you are going to be successful in the wild, you are working with people. And so one of the things that we really focus on at the zoo, because unlike any other conservation organization, we have over 1 million people coming to our campus. And so we have this opportunity to educate people like no other conservation organization can. And so we have really committed ourselves to really showing how kids need to connect with nature at an early age. And so we have a new exhibit called Zoomazium. And I'm really proud to introduce Frank Hine. He's the project manager for Zoomazium. I don't know how many of you have gotten a chance to see it yet. It opened this summer. But it is a place where kids can connect to nature right there on the zoo grounds. And then what we instill in them is a conservation ethic from a very early age. We also reach the parents, of course, but that way we can begin that process of creating a connection of what they see in the zoos to what we do in the wild. So I want to introduce Frank Hine.
Okay, Zoomazium. Now, one of the things that's interesting about Zoomazium and the way the zoo operates is we needed to build a place for kids to connect to, young kids. And my background, I'm a wildlife ecologist by training and trade. I've spent a huge amount of time in the field as an eagle trapper. I've worked with bison. I did endangered salmon work. Gradually did a little bit more and more education work as I moved along. But when it came time to create a children's play space, we didn't go to the normal to try to do that. We actually took this from the very beginning as an ecological opportunity, as a conservation opportunity. And so, to my surprise, they let me actually develop an exhibit for kids. I actually have quite a lot of experience with kids in education, but it was the conservation piece that mattered most, and you'll see as we get into the pictures what Zoomazium actually is about, how that all came together, and it's very different than anything you would have in your mind as you conjure up children's play space. So basically, indoor, outdoors, and just a lot of fun, and designed really for our core audience, which is kids and the parents that they bring to the zoo, which is how I like to look at it. Also, as Lisa mentioned, this is a place to really build those long-term connections to nature. The research we came across in development of this project was astonishing in terms of the value and the amount of connection that happens for kids at that, what I call the kid-nature interface, really early in life, that if it doesn't happen then, it's almost impossible to reconnect later. It can be done, not the same though. Kids are so emotional, and this relationship to nature that we all have is so emotional. If you're in this room, the odds are back when you were 5, 8, 7, there's a place you used to go. There's a little back 40 or an animal that you knew, something that connects you to nature. It happened then, and it stayed with you for your whole life. So our job is to make sure that happens for kids, all kids, as they go through their lives. Now, I'll hit on this really quickly just because I don't want to belabor the point, but one of the reasons this is so important to do isn't just the warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing kids are connecting to nature and having a great time. It makes my day every time I see it, but one of the key pieces that's going on here, and the reason we felt this is so important to invest in, is that kids are having less opportunity to connect with nature, period. Depending on whose study you look at, it's as much as 50% less time spent outdoors doing anything than it was 10 and 15 years ago. That's a bit alarming to a group like the Woodland Park Zoo, whose goal is to make sure that nature matters and that you have animals and habitats that you love so much you'll do anything to protect them. Well, you have to love them first. And so our job is to make sure that kids get that opportunity to connect. But it's not just about us, it's also about the kids. As it turns out, nature needs its kids as much as kids need their nature. And kids that don't get exposure to nature, sadly we're able to measure this now because there are huge populations of children growing up with no meaningful contact to nature. And they're showing signs of stress. The amount that we're medicating kids under 8 for stress and attention deficit and all these other symptoms is alarming. But what's interesting is that the current research now shows time spent in nature can outperform Ritalin, can outperform the other drugs in getting the kids to settle down and be okay. And it really looks like what it's turning out to be is your kids need nature as much as they need vitamin D or anything else. So if you want to be good to your kids and help them grow up well, healthy doses of nature. And the other last fun thing that I found is there doesn't appear to be a ceiling to this. The line just keeps going. More is better. More is better, more is better. And so our goal is to provide as much as we possibly can. Now the last thing, because we're here at Microsoft, I did want to bring up technology as an interesting double-edged sword for us at the Woodland Park Zoo, and as we really look at kids. As we move forward as a society, as the world flattens and we move into the world that we're in right now, if you can actually be a participant, that's where we are. It takes a lot of training and time to become a technology-savvy kid growing up. That's fine. Actually, I'm a big tech person myself. I'm an early adopter. I love all that. But this decrease in time spent outdoors is something we need to remedy. So we have to be intentional about getting kids to go outside. We do that. However, to me, the really promising thing about what we can do with technology and what the tools you're developing is that if, for example, I wanted to save the Galapagos and you all needed to go there so you could understand what needed to be saved, we would trash it beyond saving. That's not how you save it. The way you save it is to be able to create tools and presentations and ways of communicating, right, to kids and parents and the public at large that this is so special it needs to be saved. Well, technology can do that. In the last 4 or 5 years, it's gone from, in my opinion, conveying information well to actually being able to convey emotion. And if we can get on top of that and really do that well, I think we actually have a really good hope of having this become a virally networked big deal where kids and parents and everybody really gets on this. Not a niche thing at all, a very serious piece of work that everyone's doing to try to save the natural world. I think technology has a huge role in that, and that's my little note here that says naturalistic technology ? We coined that term at the Woodland Park Zoo because we think it's possible. We think that if you pay attention to the technology and create it just right, you can create that effective nature. And some of the things that you get in a nature context, you can get through some things that we do with technology. And research actually does support this. I don't have time to go into it right now, but there's some really good research that shows that even looking at images of nature start to move toward relieving stress and ADHD and creating emotional connections. We're very excited about that. The last thing I'll say about that, though, is as the zoo for the Pacific Northwest, at least we like to think so, there are other partner organizations, but as the most naturalistic out there, we go to AZA, which is our national conference. I was just there, and what people will say to me again and again and again is like, well, of course you guys would be thinking about things like that and coining terms like naturalistic technology. You're right up there in Microsoft land. We hear it again and again and again. Of course you do it. I think there's an expectation by the world at large that if anyone's going to figure that out, that's us in this part of the world. And we actually have, not only do we rely on the assistance that you've given us to do that, we continue to look for that kind of assistance both financially but intellectually as well. The brain trust that's here to help us figure these kind of things out. And yeah, save the world. We talk in those terms. That is one of our big things. We're trying to do that. So enough of that. Let's move on to the fun stuff. So we built this place, Zoomazium, for kids 8 and under. And if you're going to do business with kids 8 and under, their business is play. So you better embrace that. So rather than build a whimsical exhibit, an exhibit that was kind of playful, we decided, and the research again supported this, let's create a play space that really gets at what nature's all about and gives the kids that introduction to what nature's about. So we actually had to clear out an old site here. This is the site of the old primate house. That was that old kind of ugly 60s looking brick building that used to sit there, and we're kind of happy to have it gone. All we had to do was build the building. There you go. And what's cool about this building, well, there's a lot cool about it, but this is a LEEDs candidate building. We don't know if we'll hit silver or gold for LEEDs, but everything about this building is nature friendly as you can make it. All of the glass on there has a little bit of a milky look to it because it's anti-bird strike for birds. So they'll see it they'll see it as solid, not as something that can pass through. We actually have had no documented bird impacts to this building since we built it. I think that's correct. I haven't heard of any. I know we look for them every day. We actually go around the building looking to see, does it work? Looks like it does. We're one of the first groups anywhere to go to scale with this kind of a technology on the windows, and it's paying off. Bird strikes, window strikes with birds, big problem in deaths. Also, if you look at the roof, it's a green roof, but it's not just a grassy roof. What we've actually done, again, I think the first time this has ever been done, we recreated the habitat of what would have been on the forest floor, and we put it on the roof. And so from the sky looking down, the ecological footprint of this building approaches zero. All of the wood is forest stewardship products. Everything throughout that we could possibly do, we did as gently as we could. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but we're a showcase, as Lisa mentioned. More than 1 million people a year walk through our gates. And if we can show that we walk the talk to 1 million a year, every year, for years and years and years to come, it sends the right message and it helps us get that dialogue going. Okay, so we're going to go inside Zoomazium now. I'm going to show it to you. Before I do, though, I'm going to take a quick detour and show you what play spaces for kids 8 and under usually look like. This is the frame of reference, and the argument usually is kids have great imaginations. You don't really need to go to that level of detail. Why would you invest millions to create this sort of naturalistic feel for the kids when they're just as happy here? We were talking earlier before this presentation that those are the exact same conversations we used to get into about why would you bother to create a naturalistic exhibit for an animal and spend $1 million on it. They do just fine in the cages. It's exactly the same. And what we think we're doing is moving that paradigm just like we did years ago for animals. We think we're moving it for kids again. They are smarter, they're quicker learners than we ever guessed, and the more research comes out, the more we discover it pays to invest in these kids, and so we do. So let's go inside Zoomazium. Contrast those last two shots. So what's usually done, what we've done. This is just the toddler zone inside Zoomazium. One of the things you'll notice that things feel pretty nice. They feel pretty natural in there. Now, granted, in the toddler zone especially, we've taken some liberties and had a little bit of fun. So the egg you see there that kids can hatch out is never empty. It's busy all day long, all day long. The kids get in, they hatch out. One of the fun things to this, you can just see it off to the right, or your right, of the egg, is a video screen. And what we're able to do here is we actually have a little handheld device. And so if I'm out there playing with the kids and we're setting up the egg and hatching out of it, I can ask them if they're going to hatch as a chicken or a lizard. If they tell me they're going to hatch as a lizard, when they come out, I've queued up on that video screen a Komodo dragon hatching out of an egg. And we're doing measures on this, but the kids actually are drawn to that much more since they've just been a lizard hatching. And now they see the thing hatching. They'll sit for the whole video, watch it, be excited by it. It's very different for them because they're engaged in the thing. That's what I mean also by naturalistic technologies, using these technologies to draw the kids into this story. And of course, if they want to be a chicken, then it's a chicken hatching. And we have more things that we're going to be doing in there. Another thing that stands out is that mountain you see there, Toddler Mountain, is not made out of soft material. That feels like granite. It's rock. And for little guys, little toddlers and up, so the 3 and under set, including 6 months old, 8 months old, as they're just getting their bearings, just being able to kind of waddle around, we thought, well, you know what? Kids are smarter than we used to think. They're going to get this. And they do get it. I've had, so far, no injuries on this area, and I was really worried about it. We took a chance on this. Every toddler place you see is big, cushy pillow land. Kids get bored with it really fast. They go find the most dangerous thing, don't they? And they go play on that. So we decided, let's just build something that really looks good and dangerous so the kids will want to play on it. It works. So let's step back a little bit now. We're looking at the bigger area of Zoomazium. I should point out 2 things. One is you'll see that television screen inside the monitor, or inside the mountain there. That's actually an underwater opportunity, and so what we do is the Seattle Aquarium, who's a great partner of ours, we went down there and shot a lot of footage inside their tanks. We actually have a scuba diver swimming by and waving at the kids, and it life-size, so it looks like it's real, and the kids are waving back. It's just a lot of fun. No limit to things we can do in there. It's not on a DVD that loops. We actually have this on a server in the back room, and we can activate any number of videos, and we change it hourly, different content all the time. So it's like nature. It's not the same thing. You don't hit a button and get what you want. You have to wait for it. So we start to model that behavior. Second thing I want to mention is Microsoft actually supported the Zoomazium project in the area of $1 million. That helped us with planning. It actually helped us with the execution and build out of the exhibits you're seeing here. And they chose to designate those dollars toward the mountain. So I focused on the mountain a little bit for you, but we're very pleased with what actually we came up with on the mountain space. A quick look back in here. This is our project place tent. Now you've seen these things, those of you with kids. You've seen the areas where the kids play and do projects, but in our case it's a research tent. Looks like a real one. And when you get to do projects, you get to do things like this. I used to work out of tents like this on the Comanche grasslands in Colorado, so we got a tent like this. And we made it real because I know how to make it real because we used to work out there. So it gives the kids a sense of I'm a researcher and I'm playing, not just I'm playing. There's a big difference there for us. I can't remember who else is in here. My director and the mayor, of course, are in this one. This is opening day. And the kids are looking down at the floor here, and this is what they see here. Good example, again, of us. We're kind of in our infancy on this, but it's pretty cool. It's cooler than any place we've seen before in how you do these things. This is a lake. It's a watering hole for the elephants. And there are no buttons, but when the kids walk by and hit a sensor, that sensor lights up the screen, and in this case it's a giraffe coming down getting a drink of water. And the kids just delight at this, and they try to figure out how they made it happen. They know they made it happen, but they can't just button push. They have to walk around. And it turns out when they follow the animal tracks up to the screen, that's what triggers it. They eventually figure that out, but it's just huge fun. Again, just looking at the detail and the character of nature that's in this place. That slide, we wanted to have a slide in here, but we actually made it into this tree that has fallen over, and that's the hollow of the tree, and it all kind of reads and makes sense. And again, the environment is something we're very pleased with. And of course, just add kids. It is remarkable the difference between standing there looking at it as a piece of art. You know, we built it, so we're kind of proud of it. Then add the kids, and it changes. You don't recognize it within 5 minutes once the kids load up and start having fun. They don't need any instructions. They don't need any signs. There is no wrong way to play in this space. Just set it up, let them play, and they play all day long and have a great time. And now, as we had hoped, they're asking their parents to come back again and again and again. And almost every visit here, no matter what the weather, ends in a zoo visit to go see the animals. So we set up the I play like a mountain goat. Mommy, I want to go see a mountain goat. So we make those connections that way as well. This is deep inside your mountain. This is a lava cave, a lava tube. But I can change that screen to a glacier calving, change the lighting to light, white, and blues, and I now have a glacier cave, and it can be many, many more things. Nature Exchange, this is one of those pieces that connects us out to the rest of the zoo. This is really important. I don't have time to go as far into it as I'd like, but what happens here is as kids learn more about nature, they get points for what they know. They can trade those points for cool things, and we have a huge array of projects and items they can trade for, and the kids will set their sights on the coolest fossil in the whole world for 20,000 points, and we'll see them again and again. And in some of their free time on a nice day, they're outside learning things because they know those translate into points, and they're going to get their fossil from us also out on zoo grounds. And it creates this connection outside the zoo walls, the zoo boundaries, to nature. And I'll go really quick through this. This is my favorite pair of pictures from opening day. And I just opened Zoomazium this morning for the kids. Just happened to be there, so I opened the doors. This is exactly what happened this morning, too. It happens every day. The kids line up. They can't wait to get in. And some very quick numbers on what we've been seeing. But we've actually had 300,000 visitors in 5 months to Woodland Park Zoo's Zoomazium, just this little building, in the 5 months we've been open. That means that nature connection, parents understand it. They know this nature connection is important. They know it's good for their kids. We're trying to reinforce that. And, of course, all of that goes out to the bigger world. Last thing, I forgot to mention this last time. I'll mention it this time, and that is the folks that actually do the work on the grounds inside Zoomazium, for the most part, we do have some staff, but it's our teen volunteer program. And so the teens learn how to work with young kids. They get to pursue their passions as well. And the kids relate so much better to a young teenager than they do to a middle-aged guy like me. It works out great. It's just a huge amount of fun. And that running this place now over the long haul is one of those things that we look for funds for, just to make sure that the vision we had in mind when we started it stays alive, and we continue to change the content. We continue to march down the road to making this better and better and better. And the technology layers in this, you wouldn't know it by looking at it, but I have a huge server room in the back that's very busy running a lot of content. We want to keep raising the bar on the quality of things we do inside the space. So that's all I've got time for on Zoomazium right now. And I'm going to hand this off to Ruddick for a quick conversation with you. And thanks so much for your time today.
Hi. So, obviously this presentation is done in the context of the Giving campaign, so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that and basically tell you that our hope here is that when you do give, if and when you do give money during the Giving campaign or throughout the year, that you do consider the zoo. And I think I've been a donor with the zoo for a couple of years now, and I really like going to the donor events that they have, mainly because you can see animals and sometimes touch them and stuff, which is fun. And but what I quickly noticed is that I was not the typical demographic of a donor, being that I'm fairly young and not married and I don't have any children. But what I think is important and what's great about the zoo is that there are lots of opportunities and actual reasons to donate, whether or not you have children, whether or not you actually visit the zoo on an ongoing basis. And so I think obviously we just saw this great presentation on Zoomazium and how important it is for children and what a great job that the zoo does in terms of not only getting them there to look at animals but teaching them about things so that they get an immediate interest in science and biology and actual conservation. But the conservation aspect is the main reason that I donate to the zoo, and I think it's very important. Some of the programs were touched on, the tree kangaroo collaring project, and when it comes down to it, most people, when you talk about animal conservation, don't really first think about the zoo. They might think about Greenpeace or Save the Whales or what have you, but the zoo has conservation programs all over the world and for all different types of animals. And what's pretty interesting about it, if you think about it, the advantage that the zoo has that some of those other conservation programs don't is that they have a targeted audience of 1 million people a year that come to the zoo. And we already know that these 1 million people enjoy animals and are passionate about animals, so it's a perfect venue to let them know about conservation and teach them about conservation. And so I think it's a great thing. There's a number of donating opportunities you can do during the Giving campaign. You can actually give money directly to the Zoomazium, and I'm not sure if we're touching on it today, but I think we actually do a 2-for-1 matching for direct donations to the Zoomazium during the Giving campaign. Or you can give money to the Tree Kangaroo Project that needs money for this year by the end of the year. Or you can just give money to the General Zoo Fund. And if you don't really know what you want to donate to, or you think that just the zoo as a civic entity and something that's important to the city of Seattle, you can just give to the general fund. And I actually know most all of the people involved in making the decisions on what the money goes to and what they should spend their money on. And I know that they do a fabulous job putting money to the right place, getting people involved and doing the right kinds of things. So that's about it. And I think what would be much more exciting than me speaking is another animal, and so I think we have one.
Ratik, I would just also encourage people to come by after the presentation. We've got information about that challenge grant that Ratik mentioned, basically doubling your donation, and we've got other zoo materials over here as well. So we'll bring back on Karen as well as...
And Becky also. So we have a couple of creatures here. What I like to call this is sort of the beauty and beast section.
Who's the beauty?
I'm thinking I might have the beast, and she has the beauty. But both of them are absolutely fascinating animals. I know. You're probably just like us, and you're just a little kids trapped in a big adult body. And but we're all like those guys, and when they see these things, they're absolutely fascinated by them. And it is really, this is how we end up drawing people in, which provides us an opportunity to teach them about the importance of biodiversity, and then hopefully at that point we can encourage them to support our conservation efforts, some of which you have heard from Dr. Dayback today. So we'll take questions if you have them. You can certainly come up for pictures. I know some people, you guys can come on up. Want to come up here and see these guys? You can come up close because they're very, very cool. They're very cool.
Well, we know this is why you came. So.
Yeah, it's okay. You can admit it.
People always said it's good to have kids because then they're an excuse for you to come up closer.
Look
but
at
even
his
if
head.
you don't have kids, we welcome you.
Like he's wearing a bicycle
because really, when people come to the zoo, and most of the people who come to the zoo aren't looking for conservation or to be educated. They're looking to have a good time and spend a day with their families. but it's the animals that hook them in, and that's what gives us the opportunity to talk about all the other things we do. But not everybody can come to the zoo either, so we have outreach programs all over the state, and ones that are locally, at least in King County. Sometimes we get an opportunity to take these animals out to classrooms right here in Redmond and Seattle, all over, and give kids an opportunity that might not otherwise get a chance to come to the zoo. So we try and reach all audiences, not just those that make it to the zoo. So since not everybody's coming up real close right now, I'd like to introduce this bird. This is Koba, and Koba is a spectacled owl. These guys are native to southern Mexico and Central and South America in the lowland tropical forest, so kind of rainforest species. He's never experienced the rainforest, though. He was actually born and hatched, I guess, right at Woodland Park Zoo, and he was hand-raised from the time he was a tiny little chick, because he was our very first spectacled owl to be raised, and they'd hardly ever been successfully raised in zoos before. Being a tropical rainforest species, and knowing that tropical rainforests are in kind of questionable condition, we wanted to be able to learn how to breed these birds before they became endangered. So that pair bred very successfully and had about a dozen young that we ended up being able to send off to other zoos to become educational ambassadors or breeding birds all over the United States. So Koba's one of our great education birds. Does anybody have any questions about the owl? Yeah. I can hear you.
She's one of 2,500 species of walking sticks, and unfortunately most of them...
When it hatched? Uh-huh. What was its mom doing when it hatched? Was mom there? Yeah, usually the moms will sit on the eggs, and some owls will have just 2 or 3 eggs, and some owls will have like 10 or 12 eggs, a big old pile of eggs that they'll sit on. But about 4 to 6 is pretty typical, and she'll be sitting on them, keeping them warm, and then they start to hatch out. And when they hatch out, they're tiny little things. Can you hold up your fist real high so I can see your fist, how big it is? Hold it up high so everybody else can see it too. When Koba hatched out, he was about as big as your fist. And he was a little white ball of fluff with a little black mask around his face. And it actually takes these guys a couple of years, and slowly they get in their adult coloration, and then they get this kind of dark and light look with the white ring around the eyes, which is why they're called spectacled owls. They look like they're wearing glasses or spectacles. Okay? Anything else? I know you want to ask questions, so what I'm going to do now is just kind of invite everybody up. It's kind of the end of the presentation. Feel free to come up, take a look at any of the animals, come up and ask us some more private questions, and take advantage of it. We can't let you touch them, though. There's a couple reasons. See these big claws and that big mouth? This is actually a predatory bird, which means he catches things like mice and rats and even birds and frogs, all kinds of things, and he uses his feet, and then he tears it up with his sharp-hooked beak. So even though he looks pretty calm, he's still a wild animal.
So Becky, have you ever been grabbed by an owl or a hawk?
I've been grabbed by owls, hawks, eagles, the whole thing. For a year, I'm in the education department now, but I was actually a zookeeper for 7 years, working with the birds of prey and working down at our raptor center. So, and it's almost always human error. They're great birds, but they do get nervous, or they do, if you do something that startles them, then sometimes, sometimes the glove's a little too small and they decide they want to walk up this way, but so you have to be careful. They are, again, they're wild animals, and so we have to give them a lot of respect. Even if they're hand-raised, they still have their natural wild instincts.
I use a couple of stats for different owls. I don't know this one real deep about their ability to see at night in low light. Like, do you have anything that would be an example of it? It's kind of difficult. Just in general, their eyes are amazing in their ability to pick up light.
I know, isn't it cool? It's called it's a species of walking stick, a giant thorny phasmid, or a jungle nymph. And it's one of about 2,500 species. She doesn't bite. In fact, if you look at her face, you can see her little. Can you see her?
Yeah, I really can. Thanks.
She has basically 4 little. So her lips are modified into 4 little pieces, and so 2 of them can kind of grasp things, but 2 of them have like chemoreceptors on them. So she'll come up to leap, and it's like, okay, you don't have any secondary, alkaloid chemicals that are, dangerous to me, because she is an herbivore, and so that way she can determine whether or not she can eat it or not.
Cool. That's just no problem going vertical.
No, she can hang upside down. If you look at and she's like, oh, don't touch my abdomen. If you look at the end of her feet, she has what are called tarsi. See those two big claws? And so they're good for holding onto the bark of trees. Isn't that cool? These guys are so cool.
Very cool.
Now she's starting to get a little old. I mean, she's maximum size, maybe, well, of course in captivity there aren't monkeys and birds and parasitic wasps to take them out, but, so she'll, live 3 years. So this one's getting a little bit old, so you can tell she's walking a little slow. She's starting to get the brown spots on her wings and stuff, so she looks like she's decaying. And you get that they're really lime green when they're young, and then they start to darken as they age. When I have really little kids, I tell them that her name is Julia, and it's really interesting. The simple little things, little kids are not sure it's moving, and you can tell they kind of draw their shoulders up and their hands come up like this. And I say, "Oh, come look at my friend. Her name is Julia," and they go, "Oh, well, if it has a name, it's got to be it's got to be okay." It's the strangest thing.
So I bet if you put it in their face, like right here.
No, and I'm thinking the name wouldn't work then.
No, I don't know what it's called.
Just get it off of me.
It's good today.
Get it off of me.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's just a reaction because you look at it. And
Isn't it weird?
It's not very pleasant.
Yeah.
And where's she native to?
The western Malaysia, tropical forest of western Malaysia. Yeah.
Someplace where you expect to see a lot of foliage there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shut them down more.
Yeah, they do. They actually have control over their ear openings, which probably a lot of us wish we did too.
Feed them like live prey?
The only thing that we feed them live are things like crickets and mealworms and waxworms and things like that. Couple reasons for that. Number one, that they each have their own enclosures, a little room that they can fly in and everything. And for us to build each one of those so that a mouse can't get out would be very expensive. Also, they're not the wild, so even if you let a bird in here loose to try and catch a mouse and the mouse was running along the edge or something, they'd have to crash into the walls and things like that to get it. So he's been fed by people all of his life, so he's very used to it. But even we get a lot of wild raptors in that are rehabilitated birds, can't go back out in the wild. Some of them we're actually able to train to fly in our programs. Others we can at least train to go out, if they can't fly, to outreach or use for education at the zoo. And so we do a lot of our training on, feeding on the glove to train the birds and things like that. But some of them, have you ever been to our raptor show? It's pretty fun. You should come sometime. Yeah, we fly like a gyrfalcon, which is, one of the things, very few zoos fly gyrfalcons because they're very large and they need a lot of space, and we have a lot of space for them to fly around, and we swing a lure and it flies off. I mean, it'll fly a quarter of a mile or more away, and you can see it sometimes flying around with bald eagles and then just hightailing it back when the eagles start chasing them, and just like zip by a million miles an hour. It's just really amazing. But by swinging these lures, they get people get to see a little bit what they might look like while they're out hunting. So it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Isn't that giant?
And even the largest. So there are species that are about a foot long, which I covet.
Do you want to switch places? That way we can get to different groups of people who might not have gotten a chance to see. Yeah, and Cheryl here, who's one of our Microsoft employees here, she used to be one of my volunteers when I worked down at Raptors. So she's been that one that's gotten to handle raptors and handle Koba, in fact, and teach kids about them, or families, everybody. Yeah.
Oh, bugs. And then they see them and they're oddly and kind of twistedly fascinated. I love it. I love it. And little kids, really little ones, I mean, maybe younger than these, they come up because it moves. And so obviously the movement, gets people's attention. But kids kind of come up and they have their shoulders drawn up and their hands are up here. And I'm like, oh, come look at my friend. Her name is Julia. And it's like, oh, well, if her name is Julia, of course. She's got to be, and it's amazing. It works every time.
What does what do they eat?
Vegetation. They're herbivores. Okay. Yeah, they're herbivores. She actually, if you look at her face, look at her mouth parts. Her upper and lower lip, if you will, her mouth parts are segmented into four.
Because they're not actually round like our eyes. They're actually more barbell shaped. They actually go wide in the back, and so they just don't have the ability to swivel.
Do they have eyelids?
They do. They actually have an upper and a lower like we do, and then a nictitating opaque eyelid that comes from the side like a dog or a cat has. If your dog or cat gets sick, you sometimes see that droopy eyelid. So they have that. Let's see if I can get him to move it. There he goes. So that's there for predators like dogs and cats and owls to protect their eyes from injury while they're hunting. Either by being scratched by prey or just going down into the underbrush and having, branches and things. Their eyes are so important to them that it's really important that they be able to protect them, but still be able to see as they go down on their prey. So, typically a medium-sized owl like this might live to be, say, 15 years or so. He's already... How old are you now? There's so many birds down there, I lose track of how old everybody is. I think he's about 17 now. Yeah, but he could live at the zoo. They get good medical care. We feed them whether they're healthy or not. Whatever happens, they get taken care of. So they survive longer than most wild animals do. So he could live to be, easily well into his 20s. Yeah, which is good because we do have a lot of birds that are getting a little bit older, and we've had a lot of our birds for just a really long time. We have some of them that are getting close to 25 years old or more. So, what are you looking at over there, huh? It's called a spectacled owl, named for the rings like spectacles.
And she'll arch that abdomen right over her back and freeze in a scorpion position, so she's a scorpion mimic. I love it. It's a simple bug and all this complex stuff just to keep from getting eaten. I love it. It absolutely fascinates me. Her biggest predators, monkeys, birds, and parasitic wasps. Parasitic wasps will oviposit, underneath the exoskeleton, and basically either wasp will paralyze them, and then the young hatch and eat them alive, basically, which is an interesting, wonderful parasitic relationship. I love that symbiosis, and parasitism is fabulous. Isn't she great? Now she's getting a little old. You see, she's kind of moving slow. She's about the end of her lifespan. She's about 3 years old now. In the wild, we get a lot of birds that spend weeks or months. We get wild owls that come there all the time, and so if we have little birds perched out there, they're couldn't be prey to other wild raptors. So they have to be at least about Koba's age before we feel safe about putting them outside. You're welcome. Yeah. Have you guys all been to the zoo recently, or yeah? Okay. Yeah.
Up for a few years.
Yeah. It's changing all the time, and it's for the better for the most. Yeah. It just opened this spring. Yeah. So that's brand new. Yeah. 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 Oh yeah. Yeah. The concerts are great. Yeah. Good value too for concerts, Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate it. Okay. Yeah.
I'm from Panama, but I never see one.
Yeah, if you're in the city or something in Panama, I don't know where you live, but that most owls are in more rural areas. So
Yeah, my grandmother lived about 3 hours from the city.
Oh,
so
did she?
we went
Yeah.
out. Like I went in July, and I saw a harpy eagle.
Oh wow, that's
which is
cool.
what's in my backyard.
Yeah, those are
It was
huge. Yeah, they're really big.
Two other ones, but I didn't know what it was. But
Yeah.
it was beautiful to see.
Yeah.
So I'm going back in January with my boys because I want them to see.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, one of the reasons you might not see them is that, they are nocturnal. So during the daytime, they're staying very quiet, up in some tree somewhere. And you wouldn't think they'd be very well camouflaged, but owls, because they're so still and they just sit, they're really hard to see. They're not flying around like the crows and stuff that attract your attention. So if you're out during the daytime, and owls can be right by you. In fact, we have a wild barred owl that often comes to the zoo, or probably different ones, and it'll perch, say from here to the corner of that screen off the main pathway, and people walk by it all the time. They don't even know it's there. It's like, you just walk by a wild owl, and they're like, wow, So, if you're not expecting to see one right then, and if it's not moving, it's so easy to miss.
I
Yeah.
talk to my children a lot about seeing the animals because, like I told you, my grandmother lived in the country and
Yeah.
she didn't have no electricity.
Yeah.
So it was dark and you would see parrots and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff out there. It's funny for me, but over here you don't see that much birds.
Oh yeah, with the bird.